Yeah. So I think we'll get started. Yeah, let's start now, and any other latecomers can pick up on things. So welcome to everyone to our grandchildren's climate meeting, and we have our speaker today is Isabelle Jorg from Switzerland, who is currently in the Canaries, and who, together with a number of senior women, often referred to as the grandmothers in Britain, but actually you aren't all grandmothers, but you're senior women, seniorinnen,
Yes.
who, who have for some years been working together and eventually brought the Swiss government to court, to the European Court of Human Rights, and won your case. Now, many of you will know a bit about the case here, but it'd be good to hear from Isabelle uh, about the background to your group and a bit about the case itself, and not least what happened afterwards. There's one thing to win a case, it's another thing to bring about change. And last but not least, it'd be good if we can have a bit of a discussion, and perhaps Isabelle will have some ideas of how we might get going with some joining or initiating legal cases ourselves, because there are some in the offing here. And Nick, who is here on the screen, Nick Harris, in particular, has been a bit of a driver in in prompting us as a group to go down that route. Um, so I will, without more ado, I will hand over to Isabelle, and thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for inviting me to your monthly meeting. Yes, I'm a Klima Seniorin, and just to clarify that senior in German means men and women, and in this particular case we are only women. That's why the word senior in English we don't really like. We want to be differentiated as women. So usually I use elderly women as a terminology. But because in German you can differentiate but not in English. Anyhow, it's not the most important topic, but it is directly linked to our case. That's why we are so pricky a bit on that definition. So I'm not sure how much most of you know about our case. I just start and then you might interrupt me and wanting to get some more details or less details. So this is a free chat, I believe. From my experience in other meetings, usually we get first asked, why did you file a claim against Switzerland, the government of Switzerland? Why are you representing women only, and how did it all came about? So the first question, how did it came about, is directly linked to a very important case in the Netherlands called Urgenda, and that was brought in court among others by our Philip Bickman from the board of the European Grandparents, a Dutch organization, also filing a lawsuit against the government for not doing enough against climate change. So the legislation in the Netherlands were also weak compared to what it should be, and hence people's right for life, for well-being, are being threatened. And this was actually the first case that the state court declared that environmental groups can go after a government. And that was quite a widely published case court in the media, so at least in the environmental communities in Europe. And it was the reason why some people in Switzerland started to think how about bringing the Swiss government to court, because obviously our government also doesn't take the necessary measures as it should be. And one of the drivers were Greenpeace Switzerland, especially the strategy head of Greenpeace Switzerland, who knew some of the members of our organization, former MPs for the Green parties. And they, together with some legal experts, some scientists, practically researched, set together, discussed which would be the best possible case with the highest success rate to bring the Swiss government to implement adequate climate regulations. And it came as a result. There were two groups of very vulnerable people. First, newborn babies or very young children, and elderly women. And for obvious reason, you cannot bring a lawsuit on behalf of newborn babies for legal representatives. So a group of elderly women was put together, and we started with roughly 40 members, and became quickly more than 600, and by now we are over 3,000. And the criteria was women only at the age beyond 65, which is the official retiring age in Switzerland. So by elderly women, and I know some of you have a medical background, so there could be much better explanations than my laypersons, but women, especially in heat waves, which we are suffering in Switzerland, women have our body doesn't perspire as much as men do in heat waves, and therefore practically the body maintains the heat, and you have a risk of collapsing, dehydration, and so on, a much higher risk than with elderly men of the same age group. And I'm speaking of people beyond 75, 80, 85. And another more sociological issue is that many elderly women live on their own and tend not to look really after themselves in heat waves. So many do not know that in heat waves you have to stay inside if possible during the sun exposure with the highest level of exposure, to drink enough water during heat waves, and so on. And that's why our case is based on the vulnerable health of elderly women. We didn't want to discriminate men, but we felt that was sort of the best legal case we could come about. I'm not sure I need to discuss why Switzerland is seeing heat waves. It's a fact. We have more than 2.5 degree temperature increase over the last 50 years. The glaciers are melting, and in big cities, as in most big cities, heat waves are terrible for many people. So we formed this association with the specific objective to litigate against the Swiss government. And we started obviously at the lowest level, the environmental agency of the government, and then subsequently were refused, went up to the Supreme Court. And we lost in the Supreme Court, not on the merits, but simply on the representation. The Supreme Court declared that they wouldn't accept our case as not in their competence. Swiss elderly women have no legal right to represent others, and in any case, Switzerland is already doing enough and has still a lot of time until 2050 to comply with the Paris Agreement. So, some arguments which you wouldn't expect from a Supreme Court, but we sensed it has also to do with some ageism, feminist rejection. Switzerland is a very conservative country, and especially elderly women are still considered as just about good enough to be grannies and sitting in a rocking chair. So that's about the background. We got a lot of support, by the way, from Greenpeace through all these years in admin, secretarial support, sometimes putting in our networking behind the scenes and pre-funding our case. And that's obviously a critical aspect. Going to court is expensive. And we couldn't have gone through all these different stages of the court procedures without a huge funding at our bank. So Greenpeace pre-funded part of the legal fees. We had some very wealthy supporters who provided annually quite considerable sum, specifically for our case. And the leading environmental lawyer, who sadly passed away just before the Strasbourg case, she bequested 100,000 Swiss francs to our organization just for continuing the litigation. So we had really a huge amount of support. Is this okay, Sigurd? Shall I continue? I like this. Okay.
Yes, please. Yes, this is great.
Okay. So, I mean, the key topic today, as many people know, is this ruling by the European Court of Human Rights, as Sigurd mentioned, that we won in April 24. And I give you a little bit of a background, what we were filing and what I think were our success factors. So obviously the basis were the formal litigation, but given that the Swiss court didn't accept our representation as an organization, we filed 4 individual cases with women with very fragile health conditions and a medical history linking their condition with climate change, with heat waves, so that during heat waves their health would be significantly impaired. In addition to these 4 individuals, we filed 200 appellants, one of them myself, as representing all members of our association. We filed for right of life, so we are in the Court of Human Rights. That's key. We didn't file for compensatory damage or nothing financial, just for our right to be protected against climate change by our government. So we filed for right of life, as under the Convention of the Human Rights Catalogue, for life of right of well-being and family life, which is somehow an article where a lot of different topics can be brought into. There's a huge case law behind this Article 8. We were requesting specific actions by the Swiss government to amend the current lack of adequate environmental regulation, and we were asking our right to access to courts. You might know that being accepted at the European Court of Human Rights is a very slim chance. I believe it's between 10 or 1%. I'm not quite sure, but it's certainly not more than 10% of all cases are actually being accepted by the court. And in our case, we were not only accepted, but it was brought to the Grand Chamber and the Grand Chamber is the court where only topics of significant relevance are being sentenced, discussed, debated, dealt with. It's a court with 17 judges, and currently there is one judge representing the UK and also one is representing Switzerland. And regrettably, the UK judge was the only one who had a dissenting opinion in all 4 issues. On the basis that this is a political topic, court shouldn't intervene into the political process, and he feels this is counterproductive to accept, first of all, a case like ours, and secondly, to rule that protection against climate change is a human right. Whereas the Swiss judge, he supported our case, but he was he was badly treated in the Swiss media as a traitor, actually. So there's a lot of emotion in these cases anyhow. Non-patriotic judge, whereas yours was a patriotic judge, I guess. So we had a hearing in 2003, and the hearing took place with these 17 judges in front of us. We were almost about 100 members of our organization present, a lot of support from European Environmental Group, from Fridays for Future, the Germans, the Dutch, a huge media cover. So suddenly our case became headlines. And it was, and my background is law. So for me, it was one of the most interesting hearings I had ever attended in my professional career. And obviously our case was very well prepared. We had a legal team, experienced legal team, and we had UK Queen's Counsel, Jessica Seimer. She is apparently quite well known as a human rights expert and has been defending cases at the European Court in former cases. And she was really brilliant. And that is one aspect of our learnings, is we should not save in legal expensive. In order to bring difficult cases ahead like ours, you have to have the best prepared people. And obviously for that you have to have funds. So we had this ruling and some question and answers by the 17 judges present, and also a presentation by the Swiss representatives, obviously arguing against our case, again as a Swiss citizen, quite a shameful representation, practically again emotional. Elderly women should stay at home, we are doing enough, there's no need to go to court, and so it was a bit quite, I would say, a shameful representation of the Swiss government representation. And then 1 year after, in April 24, our case was sentenced. We got a ruling again in Strasbourg in front of the judges, and we did win in 3 of the 4 issues we had brought about. The only issue where we didn't succeed was the 4 individual representation. The court declared that the medical history couldn't actually show a causal relationship between the fragility of the health of these 4 ladies and climate change or heat waves. But the court defined a number of criteria for future cases that associations, organizations, environmental groups can bring in lawsuits on behalf of unspecified numbers of people. And as I learned afterwards through my legal community, this is actually sort of the key topic for legal experts that came out in this ruling. Not so much the fact that this is a landmark case, that climate change is now considered a human right, but the fact that the court established acceptable rulings for environmental groups to bring in claims against the government or corporations. So facilitating new litigation in summary. And we weren't asking for that. So that was fully the court's doing, and that also showed why the court wanted to bring our case, which was the first really focusing case on climate, why they wanted to bring it to the Grand Chamber in order to practically change or open up the plaintiffs' rights. And in the meantime, we have seen a good number of claims filed on the basis of our ruling as a precedent, both in Europe but also outside of Europe. Even in some state courts in the US, our case is being referenced. So in a way, what they call the media say, we made history, we made tiny bit of history, but we certainly, our case facilitates litigation for environmental issues. And that's the good news, I think, the good reward for us. Sadly, our Swiss government doesn't share this view. The Swiss government is obliged by the ruling to implement adequate regulation. It hasn't done anything so far, any binding rules, really. The process is that after a ruling, the country needs to show progress within a certain time in a period, and Switzerland had to submit a report, progress report, now already twice, and twice it was rejected on the grounds that it was not doing enough in order to comply with the ruling. Currently, the Swiss government is quite on the far right, so there's a majority of conservatives. I wouldn't say anti-climate, they acknowledge climate, they acknowledge the case, but especially in the times we are, they don't think they need to follow the ruling. Losing some reputation, but so what? And the parliament is also majority a Conservative Party and a number of parties. So the Swiss public is practically in a majority against our association. We got quite punished in medias for our case. So it's the well-known, you are nothing in your country, but you're a hero somewhere else. But we can live with this, and we are continue fighting behind the scenes to get the Swiss government abiding by this ruling at some point in time. So we have conversations with scientists, we have some support from scientific communities in Swiss universities, some influential people. Of course, there are some. The Green Party is quite important in Switzerland. It's about 15%, representing 15%, and the Socialist Party, but they are never in the majority. So we are fighting together with Greenpeace also, and with some public statements to get the Swiss government healing our not healing, implement actually regulation. So we haven't achieved our rights we were fighting for, but we have achieved a lot, I think, for the future, for other cases. And just to mention, our case is binding for the 46 countries of the Council of Europe, which is not the European Union, it's Council of Europe. The UK is also a member of this Council of Europe, and this is the sort of the owner of the European human rights. And therefore our case is a leading case in all 46 countries, which facilitates litigation. Yes, that's maybe a bit too much. Shall I continue with my learnings, or would you like to?
I wonder, Isabelle, whether you would like to take a little break in case there are some questions or comments, and then we can return to you. I mean, what you were saying about the European Court of Human Rights, of course, there's a big movement in the UK to get us out of that.
Switzerland.
For the moment, it's binding anyway.
Yes.
So let's see, are there any... I mean, that's a wonderful summary, thank you, both one of hope and of concern. Any comments or questions that anyone wants to raise with Isabelle? Sue Parfitt.
Could I just clarify whether you have won this case or whether it's still at the UN? I mean, I'm in a little bit of a muddle. I thought you'd won the case.
Yes.
But
yes. Yes, we definitely won the case at the last instance court. So there is no other court where we could be going to or being referred to. So we have won the case not in Switzerland, but in the European Court.
Yes, wonderful. And what does it mean then for your government and other governments?
The government should implement the ruling. There were some specific details in the ruling that the government should implement better environmental protection, so change the law, improve the existing laws, doing, for example, a budget on greenhouse gas emissions, which Switzerland hasn't done so far. This is one instrument to check whether actually the greenhouse gas emissions are up or down. on the basis of a budget and comparing with other countries. So the Swiss government is practically refusing to implement the ruling.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few more questions coming up. Alan from Gloucestershire. Can you unmute yourself, Alan?
Sorry, I'm not used to doing that. Thank you very much indeed, Isabelle. I've really enjoyed this. My understanding is that if UK leaves the European Court for Human Rights, all the decisions which precede the time at which we leave will remain unless they are changed by UK courts. Would that fit with your legal understanding?
I couldn't answer that question.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry, not. I'm not sure. I would rather say at the time when you file a case before the UK in this case would leave the court, that you still could refer to the former case law, but I'm not sure, so I don't want to say something that might not be correct.
Perhaps this is something for our own lawyers within our own group could follow up on, but particularly if there should be a risk that we will be leaving the European Court. Elaine, I think you're next on our list here. Elaine from Bristol.
Thanks, Sigurd. Although I am conscious there's also a couple of questions in the chat that I think we're in before any of us put up our hands. But anyway, I'm sure you'll get to them, Dania and Julianne. But my question was, would you be able to give us a short sort of summary feel for quite how arduous it was on a personal level taking this action? I mean, sort of time-wise and emotionally and all that, what it took.
Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, I had that on my notes, but then I forget to mention it, which is a shame. No, actually, there are, since the beginning, the board of the elderly women have been 9 women, practically all the time the same, and they have worked like a full-time job on this case. And they are still continue to work at least 50% of their time, because there's a lot of presentation, interviews, rewards, and so on. So and I'm not part of that board, but I'm sitting on board meetings, and I have a huge admiration for these 9 women with a complete different background, some of them high egos, others more harmonist driven, and they have managed to stay together to fight this case during 9 years. And it needs a lot of dedication, it needs a lot of strength and conviction actually, and a good teamwork. But in our case, I think they have really overdone what was expected.
So maybe this is a bit of a warning to us. In fact, Dania put in the chat box a question about what was the basis of the Swiss public criticism. We know that there were many who didn't like it, but why not? What was the reason given?
Yeah, it's a question we are asking ourselves, but we know the Swiss mentality. Some of you might know Switzerland was one of the last countries in Europe that gave voting rights to women in 1971, so not so long ago. It's an extremely chauvinistic country, at least in the conservative, non-urban population, and women are still considered as there is still a lot of women do not work once they get children. So there's still quite this tradition and role, at least in the heads of people of my age group, not obviously 20, 30, 40s, but in the parliament they have behaved extremely rude to to our co-chairs. One of them was a member of parliament for the Green parties, behaved extremely rude, extremely condescended, and calling us everything, like unpatriotic, you should buy yourself an air conditioner, and things really, really. And for example, that's maybe a good example, why did I join this group quite late? I joined after I had read in a Sunday paper. We have 2 Sunday papers, so in one of the Sunday papers, a huge report when there was a debate whether we want to go to the European Court. So we got media coverage, but very negative. For example, it says these grannies don't realize that they are being manipulated by Greenpeace. And I got so angry when I read that, so I filed immediately for membership, because this is a bit, the messages you get. One told you got a lot of anonymous whatever messages saying you should be in 400 years ago you would have been burnt, you're like a witch, and you are doing being unfair to your home country, and all types of dementia views, but they talk about like this in Parliament. So it's not just in the pub, it's in the Parliament.
Well, depressing hearing that, Isabelle. I wonder if we could move on to the next question. Julianne has a question. In fact, Julianne is going to be our speaker on the 4th of March, so you might want to put that in your diary on the question of pensions, unless you've changed your mind, Julianne.
No, I'm still up for it, but I think Isabelle is setting the bar very high here tonight. This is an absolutely wonderful meeting.
Yeah.
And I can feel everyone's emotions, I have to say, as we are listening to this, and anger as well. I can feel everybody's anger. My question is really simple, really. I mean, you said about all of the countries that are part of the ECHR are bound by the decisions of that court. So do each of those countries also have to submit progress reports on what was required for Switzerland? I mean, Switzerland's ignoring it, I get that, but do the other countries have to provide progress reports?
No, not at all, because the ruling is against the Swiss government. All other countries, they just can watch, and what is international is these possibilities to file lawsuits as climate activists. But no, other countries don't need to implement. And this is also, of course, a national process. Also, the court didn't specify which environmental text they should implement. That's part of the national. I've lost connection. No,
That's we can hear you. Yeah.
No, it's just the Swiss.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlotte. I think you wanted to ask a question or make a comment.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Isabelle. You're a great inspiration, I must say. My question's really, and I don't know whether anyone can answer it or you could answer it, but this case seems to illustrate the fact that there's no leverage. Once a court makes a decision like this, there doesn't seem to be any leverage to ensure that it gets carried out. And I just wondered whether other rulings by the court, they found some way to, produce some leverage, or what your thinking is about that, really.
Not really this court, and I think that's one of the deficiency of this court, has no sanctions. There's no sanction rights. It can only, with this procedure for progress report, put some pressure, reputational pressure, primarily on the government that lost the case. And at the last instance, it could make this Council of Europe could make a decision to cancel membership of this particular country. That has so far, I think, only been the case with Russia and with Turkey, and I think Azerbaijan, at least for a while. With Russia, it's currently cancelled. And actually, for me as a Swiss citizen and also as a lawyer, I find it terrible that a democratic country, a government, and especially Switzerland, who keep saying we are one of the best democratic countries, do not abide by the international rule of law. And we are obviously seeing this with many other different issues outside of our case in the international arena. So I think this is a threat to international rule of law.
Thank you. Nick, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Sigurd. Isabella, thank you very, very much for everything that you and your colleagues have achieved. We're aware of an action that is starting to be brought in the UK by 3 groups who are trying to bring a claim against the UK government for failing to keep below the 1.5 limit. And I've read their pre-action letter. It's 82 pages long. And there are a number of references to the decision that was made in your case. And without that decision, they wouldn't be able to do some of the things they're trying to do. So massive debt of gratitude to you for that. I do have a very practical question. How much did it cost? And did you get anything back as a result of winning?
Yes. It cost about €1 million in total, mostly legal fees, because obviously we are volunteers, we work for free, and Greenpeace never charged their support, so it's primarily legal fees. We got 80,000 Swiss francs, which is, I think, roughly 90,000 euro in the ruling. So as a compensation to be paid by the Swiss government. So we got 80,000 and we practically passed it on to Greenpeace. So currently we are more or less blank.
I know this, it can sound a bit hopeless at times. I was interested in what you were saying earlier, Isabelle, about the Urgenda case in the Netherlands, which of course you took some inspiration from. And of course the Dutch group took their government to the Supreme Court. So that wasn't an international court, it was their own court, and they won. And the Dutch government ignored the ruling, so they went back to court, and it was upheld. Now, I don't know what the status of that is now, 6 years on.
Yeah, I understand it's still ongoing. It was referred back to the appellate court, if I'm correct. And, well, Philip would be able to fully brief us on the details. I believe it's still in the appellate court for revision.
Thank you. Penny, you have a question.
I don't have a question, actually. What I want to say is I would like to say to you and to all the Klimaseniorinnen, huge admiration and congratulations for what you achieved. And you were a very brave, heroic group. And what you achieved is hugely important and admirable. And history will judge you triumphantly. History will laud you to the skies. So thank you so much for what you all did.
Thank you very much. I will pass it on to my colleagues who have really done the most bit of the job, but thank you.
I was a bit interested in the detail. I don't have a legal background, but we do have some members who have, and that's the degree of detail that's important, isn't it? You were looking at women's health in particular because of the research that particularly focused on how climate change affects women's health. Now, I guess that if you are bringing a government to court, you need to be very careful about getting the specifics right. Because I know that one of the US states, following your case, there were some groups that tried to bring their state to court, and the reason it wasn't upheld there was because they weren't actually affected by climate change themselves. I don't know, young and healthy, whatever it was. It was held that they didn't have a personal stake in it. The stake in was for others. A bit like, it'd be hard for a baby to take a country to court.
So I'm here sitting in the dark and I don't know where to put on the light, so you probably cannot see. This is not my home, but I try to make some.
That's okay, we can see you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. I cannot see it myself, but that's not important. I think there is enough of evidence by now about the impact climate change heat waves specifically have on elderly people. There is this statistics in France, for example, in the heat wave in 2003, the very first heat wave where they had, I think, over 4,000 women passing away with a direct link to heat waves. And there is this I'm not sure how you call this in English. It's something like the statistic shows the average statistic, and suddenly there are fatalities ratio much higher in heat wave years. So there's this sort of percentile that is statistically available. So I think by now there are a lot of also European-wide studies going on or have concluded on the direct impact heat waves, climate change it has on elderly people's life, which would have to be supporting a case.
It was interesting about that because we had our first executive meeting just before this meeting here, and that question came up from two of the members on our executive group, and that was about the effect on people's physical health, never mind the mental health, but the physical health of global heating. And I think that's going to be an issue that
Yes.
we will want to pay more attention to ourselves. So, yeah, very relevant.
And obviously, in our age groups, there are also some pre-existing health issues that then get worsened during heat waves. So we are usually not the healthy people as we were when we were 20. So the impact on our organism by heat has a higher effect than on young people.
Yes. There was a case in Norway about 4 years ago when our where the climate grandparent group, together with Greenpeace and a young people's organization, took the government to court over the issue of climate change. And it was rejected in the lower court, but they got to the Supreme Court and it was dismissed. And the reason it was dismissed in the national court was, if you can believe it, climate change affects the whole world. And therefore, the Norwegian constitution can't be used as a means of dealing with issues that are happening in 191 other countries. So it was thrown out on that basis. So there's a warning from that as well, perhaps.
Yeah, I think now with our case, with this, at least in Europe, that climate change is a human right, or fighting climate change is a human right, or being protected against climate change. This argument is probably no longer feasible. But so shall I give you a bit of my conclusions?
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you. Yes.
Or learnings, I call it more learnings. And in my view, I mean, we have seen it has taken us 8 years to get to that decision. But we also know that parliaments tend to take too much time to draft, to implement legislation on critical issues when their career, their re-election is at stake, the public is against it, and so on. So in my view nowadays, the fact that it takes a long time to go to court, to the different court procedures, is no longer an argument, because the legislation process also takes ages. So I would think that currently that the judicial system is not yet really controlled by politicians, as we are seeing now in more and more countries. We have sort of a time frame of 5 to 10 years where legal cases should be filed and could have a successful outcome. Once the judicial system is being controlled by political system, probably that window will be closing. That's my very personal view. Then I think in order to be successful, you have to build up a case long before you actually submit a lawsuit. So you have to analyze what in your country would be the best possible outcome, which group could represent that case, what type of lawyers you would like to hire, what evidence, scientific evidence you would need. And I think it would be essential to previously have really like a project team before you actually bring the case, because as I said, it's extremely expensive, so you don't want to invest money into something that is not well prepared. So I think that's one of the key learning. Invest enough time in prepare as a really robust case. You still don't know whether the outcome would be successful, but at least have a robust case. Have a team that stands behind that case and that hopefully continues for a long time. Get enough funds. Try to get support through social media, through other traditional medium, if possible. Create some emotional story, if possible, and get that, and have patience and a little bit of luck. We had luck because the court was expecting something like our case. So we were at the right moment, at the right court. But that is also luck.
Thank you. We have with us, Sue. I was just going. I must have read your mind. Sue Parfitt is a member of Christian Climate Action and goes about seeking change in a rather different way. Were you going to comment on that?
No, I wasn't. I was going to comment on something else, but I need to see who's at the door because it may be the police. I just need to do that. But I do want to comment on something.
Well, I think this will be the first time that we've seen the police at any of our meetings. But Sue has an interesting past when it comes to that. But
yes, I was going to say, hopefully they're not here to take Sue. One of my many actions.
Yeah. Isabelle, returning to you, you're getting a bit of advice, a bit of warning as well. Not completely hopeless, but you're not you're not offering what we would call a golden bullet, I think.
Oh.
Silver bullet. Sorry, I sometimes get the English phrases wrong. A silver bullet, that there's one way that you can get change. But was there anything else you wanted to give us while you still got time?
I'm a bit running out of time. Well, I think certainly get advice from others. You know, some groups are asking us for advice before they file a lawsuit. We have the deep sea mining experience in Norway. We have now in the European countries quite a number of cases with learnings, and I think you don't need to start from scratch. You know, reach out to those who have gone through the process. But I think it's still important to have a really good case for taking national topics into account. Obviously, your legal system, your way of bringing in claims and so on. But there is a lot of support outside.
Now, Isabelle, we've taken up a lot of your time.